Any questions I'm not used to. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another installment of the World AIDS Museum and Educational Center's Spotlight Series with Raquel, myself, who's the Executive Director, and Andy Ruffner, who is our Director of Education and Programming. We are so excited this week because we have Mr. Morris Singletary, who is a community activist out of the Atlanta area, but he has been living boldly with HIV for almost 15 years. He's coming up on his anniversary. So I want to welcome Morris to our Spotlight series. And, we want to tell a little bit about your story. And as everybody knows, the Spotlight series is really a conversation. It's a 30-minute conversation about how people intersect with HIV. And we use it in our larger oral history project that we have at the World AIDS Museum. So welcome, Morris. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm a ball of energy right now. I'm feeling a multiplicity of things at this moment.
Well, we're very gentle. We don't attack anybody. And so we're really just looking for the greatest conversation that we can have about you and about your intersection with HIV. And so let's start the question, how did you find yourself intersecting, or when did you first hear about HIV?
So I think I was in the 7th grade. I remember my telephone number being 404-344-0088. Why do I remember this? I don't know. But I remember going in front of Greenbrier Mall. I lived on the black side of town. That's the south side of town. And something came on the radio about AIDS, not HIV, AIDS. And the statement was made while I was in the passenger seat. That's what gay people get for being gay. That's God's punishment. And I don't think that the person who said this said it out of a place of malice as much as they did a good old Southern Baptist person. And that was my first intersection. Being a 7-year-old child, hearing that and knowing that it was really, really bad. I didn't know it meant death at that time. And now, by the way, I was born in 1977, so this is 1984. That's when I first heard AIDS. Then I remember going to, in 5th grade, there were jokes and rhymes about Rock Hudson. And I remember sitting at the table, and my last name is Singletary, so I'm at the end of the line. And so I had a circle table. I wasn't at the table with everybody else. And hearing another kid make the rhyme and saying something like, how you gonna be like Rock Hudson? And it was an insult. My second intersection. Fast forward, 1997, I become a community member of the LGBTQ community. As I like to say, I started playing with boys. Okay. And so you knew about it, but I'm educated. I'm at Dillon University. It's 1997. I'm 20 years old. I'm from Atlanta. I'm living the life, And so you hear about it. That's all you do is hear about it, and that you don't want it. And being at an HBCU and graduating from an HBCU and then coming out, I remember I was working at Bell South and I had my very first roommate. And this was before AT&T bought Bell South. That's how old I am. So he says, Morris, why are you talking? My roommate says, why are you talking to this boy? He's skinny. And skinny people have HIV. And I just thought that was the worst thing in the world to say. Later, he contracted HIV. And at that time, I was living quite risky, if you will. Again, the myths of HIV started to, be more pronounced to me as I was a single Black male in Atlanta, Georgia, who's gay and cute and knows how to dress. So I didn't have a problem socially or sexually. And
what can I ask? The whispers. People, there's other conversations we have with with other features who talk about the whispers of HIV. What
Yes.
does that mean, or what did that mean to you when you
Oh, the whispers
the
of HIV. Yes,
yeah.
listen. And I never heard that term, but I can tell you what the whispers are. Oh, he got black nails. That's HIV. Oh, his weight is going up and down. Child, that's HIV. Oh, well, their boyfriend got it. That's HIV. Oh, well, they do that kind of drug. That's HIV. And so while they may have named avenues that people may have contracted HIV, they also put people in a box. Because Whitney Houston said she was always going to be skinny. That's what Whitney Houston said. And to this day, it's not been reported that she had HIV. There are people who are naturally slim and they're going to be slim. This is the most weight I'm going to gain. And this is fat to me, right? But my family is naturally slender, or this is the most solid that we're going to get. I was much, much smaller. I'm living with HIV today, and this is Morris. And so those whispers were now, and I had irresponsible sex, someone would get HIV because I'm not skinny. I got a little bit of man meat, COVID, and whatever else. Those were the whispers. Black nails. Oh, but I'm not gonna sleep with nobody who has black nails. Super skinny. Well, he can't be fat because that's just not what I'm gonna date. Listen, that's another whole thing for the LGBT community to talk about when we look at body shapes and what we like. But that's not what this is about. So I didn't date anybody super skinny. Now this is a 21 to 25-year-old who's not now I'm skinny. I look like a high school student still. Talking about that. But when I did the math, I think I contracted HIV within the first year that I started living out loud as an LGBTQ community member. I was 29 when I was diagnosed, and I was diagnosed with AIDS. And the timeline says it takes up to 9 years to 11 years to develop AIDS, right? And so I said, well, Morris, if you're diagnosed and you got AIDS, once I learned this information, that means you were 20. And that was that was your first time ever sleeping with a male. That broke my heart. Oh, that broke my heart in so many ways because I had things going on. It was me and God, and then it was me and my mama, and then it was Morris and me. And so I had to have those kind of awakenings because what was I doing at 20 that I didn't protect myself, that I did not know, the rules I did not follow. I'm an educated, I am a degreed man, and I'm getting HIV. As though degree people can't get it, right? And so it only taught me another lesson. So my intersections were 5 years old, 7 years old, unknowingly 20 years old, and diagnosed at 29. So they got 4 intersections.
Can I ask you a question about testing in there? So where was testing? How were you thinking about testing in those days?
So as a Black man from Atlanta in the South, what is healthcare? Right? What is healthcare to me? Healthcare to me was ginger ale if your stomach don't feel good, right? And that was about it. Like, I wasn't a sickly child. I had hay fever. I had sinus problems. So when pollen fell, I sneezed. Yay! Like that was it for me. And so leading up to my diagnosis, when just doing this timeline, when I progressed to AIDS and opportunistic diseases began to catch me, and I still did not know. Testing was not ever said. I had Shigella. And it's funny, I just had a conversation with my program director of my nonprofit. We were talking about Shigella and the transmission and how you get it. And so I went to one of the social groups I'm in and I said, and I mentioned the act of how you get it. I said, how many people were taught how to do this specific act in this oral sex specifically? And they said, well, I just started doing it, or I watched a porn video, or I listened to conversations. So you're doing something from people who did not know, who still don't know. And when I got Shigella, this was the most hurting thing. I had an Asian doctor. Again, I'm not really trying to see this man, but I had a follow-up. He says, you had Shigella. That means you had to do the following things. And he said this, which turned me off. You should reconsider your lifestyle, Mr. Singletary. There's some words that I could say, but I'm sure this is a family program. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
Yeah,
but I
and I
think
won't
that
say
feeds
those.
but it feeds into the whole conversation around stigma. It's like they label it, you were labeled, and therefore people get to say whatever they want to you.
I was labeled and not educated, and not educated.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's startling, actually. And yet, not surprising. Even today, we have people who would say some outlandish things that don't seem appropriate in considering it's 2021 and that would happen, you know.
Yeah.
What are some of the conversations around your finding out that you were positive? Like, you know, part of some of the conversation really is about what was your first reactions to it? What was your support system around that? Yeah.
I remember at 313, Teresa Clark, that was my doctor. It was my mom's doctor, actually. And I had made a promise to a friend that I was going to get checked out. I never had her on the list to call for the results, either way they went. I only told 3 people that I was going to get tested. And at 3:15, when she told me, Mr. Singletary, you tested positive for HIV. I don't know if I didn't hear her, but I realized what she said because it didn't bother me. I had already cried on the way to get tested, so it was out of my system. She says, well, I want to set you up with an ID doctor. Folks started using these words. I said, what's an ID doctor? She says, infectious disease. She says, your HIV will get under control, but it's the other things that are worrying me because you are continuing to lose weight, throw up, you can't keep food in or down. That don't bother me. I got HIV, man. Little did I know, I had cryptosporidia and giardia. And I understand, I didn't know then that a lot of people don't survive cryptosporidia. I didn't know. And so at 3:17, I go to her nurse's desk, and she says, now, why are we sending you to the name of the place, the agency that I went to, or the name of the place? And I said, I just tested positive for, I had to say it within 3 minutes of getting tested that I just tested positive, and I had to say it. I cried so many tears in that one space. And when I came into the office, nobody was there, but now there is a room full of people, and I have to go through these people, and now my life has changed because I came in as an HIV negative man, and I'm walking out as an HIV positive gay man. And so at that moment that I said it, it was like the scarlet letter. And so the place where I was getting tested was on Peachtree Street. And I want to give anybody who's looking at a visual of that. Peachtree Street is the main thoroughfare in Atlanta. It takes you from north to south, and it splits east to west. And so I get back in the car and I cry some more. And I said, well, Lord, I can't stay here because it's parking is my timing. So I needed to get out. And so I get out, and the doctor's office is across the street from Piedmont Hospital. Lord, why am I across from a hospital? Like, all of these things are going through my head. Lord, I'm going to end up there. And I did twice. But I stopped at the light, and people at the bus stop, I felt as though they were looking at me, and I had HIV written all over. And I called the first person, and the first person did not answer. I didn't leave a message. The second person was busy. They said they'll call me back. And the third person was at work. And I said, I tested. He said, just come here. And I went there and I was afraid to hug my best friend. And I wanted to deflect. I said, well, did you eat? Because I know he did eat already. I said, let me go get you some food. And I pull up to Wendy's, pull out my debit card, and I'm scared to give it to the lady at the window because I don't want her to get it. I'm scared to take it back. I'm scared to grab his food in the bag. It was rough. Because I was so ignorant on how things were, but I was also so weak and I was so tired. And I was hurt and I was mad. And I thought about my mom who prayed for her grandkids when I was in 6th grade. And now I'm not able to do it and I'm sick. I'm a gay man who has HIV, who's sick. And what the church people said happens to gay people. And the church is a huge part of my world. So it was very hard in the beginning because there was so many people I disappointed. So many people who had hopes for me. And I knew that I was very sick. And so then we had to find out what else was going on. And I had syphilis. So I go to my doctor and I get these syphilis shots. Lord have mercy. And I tell my mom on July 8th, I want to say it was July 8th, it was a Sunday. And I tell her by writing her a letter. And before I told her, I had to tell someone else, which is my best friend since 6th grade. He says, man, I got to tell you something. I said, I got to tell you something too. He says, man, I got married June 23rd. What you got to tell me? I tested positive for HIV on June 23rd. Mm. And so, excuse me. He said,
I want to give you a tissue through the there you go.
Thank you. This is the time I felt like I hurt somebody the most. He said, man, how could you do this to me? This is what my best friend said. He's a heterosexual male who knows I'm homosexual and loves me no matter what. He said, man, how could you do this to me? And I think that hurt more than the pain of me hurting my mom, because he believed in me through, and at that time, this is 1997, it still wasn't cool to have a gay best friend, or, you know what I'm saying? I mean, he called me his brother. And so I had to tell him because I needed to tell his mom, because I needed his mom to be my mom's support. I had it all figured out. Like this letter, Mama Kathy, I got to tell you something. I'm HIV positive, and I cry again. She said, so what we going to do about it? We finna fight. She asked me the question and she asked us the question at the same damn time. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is what it's about. But I'm not that strong. And so that was the beginning. The beginning was a lot of tears. The beginning was crying on my pillow 14 days straight before I told my mom. For 2 hours at night because I knew she was asleep and I could cry into the pillow and she not hear it. All she knew is that something was wrong. And I wouldn't tell her. But when I told her, she surprised me. She called her best friend, who is a doctor in education. And she gave her some very wise counsel. And she says, you're going to love your child. Because you loved your child before this, you're going to love your child through this. And that's what we found out later, that it was cryptosporidium. I got worse before I got better. I had a PICC line they had to feed me with, because again, I wasn't holding food down or in. And so the immediate thing was not that Morris had HIV, we just want Morris to live. I had family members coming to visit me, and this is how I should have known it was bad. My daddy came to visit me. My father was not a part of my life heavily. He wasn't absent, but he just wasn't there. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. He came back around and taught me some amazing lessons after contracting HIV about Christianity, of which he no longer believes. So it was a beautiful transition. It was a hard transition. And that transition took 10 years before I got it right.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's from that I can hear the emotion and the empowerment, because your best friend's mother was right from the beginning going, what are we going to do? Because we got to fight this. And I think that is such a wonderful example of people stepping up.
Yeah.
And being able to be there, because in 97, still people were still unsure. There was still
I'm sorry,
a lot.
2006 is when I was diagnosed. 97.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. 2006, but still the fact that you were also wondering whether if I touch somebody or hug somebody, because hugging is an example that we all use of caring, that physical touch. And you were denying yourself that physical touch out of fear, out of what you thought was happening. And
they
thank
just
God.
had a baby. My best friend had just had a baby.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to get near. She calls me Uncle Morris to this day.
Mm-hmm.
They've never said Morris by itself, and they've never said Uncle by itself. It's always Uncle Morris.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to get near their child.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walked in before, I told them, hey, here, hold your niece. Nope, not right now.
Mm-hmm.
I went and bought paper plates for home. Mama just thought I was being nice. Until after she figured out, that I told her, and then she figured out why I bought paper plates. I did not want to eat on silverware. It was, self-stigma is a lot. And I speak about self-stigma when I talk to people who are surviving and thriving with HIV. Because self-stigma is a combination of the things that you hear throughout your life and what you experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so my self-stigma was worse than anybody else's stigma. Even today, I still fight self-stigma. Like, people see me smiling and doing these kinds of things that I'm doing with you, Dr. Lopes. But this self-stigma is a mug. Like, it's a whole situation that I battle daily.
Yeah. Which brings me to a really important question, I think, about your evolution into becoming such an incredible educator. And we were talking about this earlier, but you've come here to Fort Lauderdale. You did a presentation for us a couple of years ago during Black History Month at the African American Research Library and Cultural Center. And I heard you then. And I thought you were pretty cool then, but I have to tell people about this session I went to that you did on Zoom with
University of Cincinnati.
I know, which is where I came from. That's where I'm a former employer. So I think we had 70 some people in the Zoom room or something crazy like that. Yeah. Anyway, you did this amazing history of the experience of HIV in the Black community. It was called Black in Time, and you were on fire. You just got everybody engaged and involved and kept the whole conversation going. I mean, it was amazing. And so it's hard for me to picture the Morris that you're describing at that point. So tell us about that transition, because I think that's really important for people to hear.
The transition. You heard the beginning, and I want to warn people, it got worse before it got better. And not worse health-wise. Here I am again. I'm a Christian young man. I'm gay. I have HIV. I can't commit suicide because that's the only thing that you can't ask for forgiveness for because you're gone. And so I thought about ways to try to kill myself without me killing myself. Wanted to make the right person mad. Everybody loved me, so I couldn't make people mad, right? And I thought if I stopped taking my meds and I do street drugs or recreational drugs, that it would happen faster. I just happened to have an amazing doctor who did not give up, who would not give up. And she met me at every point that I was and said, Mr. Singletary, you got to be committed to it. You got to be committed to your meds, and you got to be committed to yourself. And she asked me what was my favorite TV shows, and I named the Cosby Show. She says, "You got to be like Bill and Heathcliff and Mrs. Huxtable. You got to be married like that. The commitment has to be that." And so when I got that in my Claire Huxtable, it slipped my mind. When I got that in my mind, I said, "Oh, that's really deep," because the Huxtables were the ideal family. That was what Black love was. And I based what I wanted to be when I grew up, based on what I wanted my family to look like. Even though it was going to be a man and a man, I still wanted that kind of love and structure and depth of my family. And so I said, "Oh, well, I don't know if I could ever be that committed to anything." And that was the first thing, learning to be committed. So that was part of the transition. And so I had to date my medicine. And we had to go on dates. Sometimes we went on daily dates. Sometimes we didn't go on our daily dates. But it was a thing that I began to do. And so now I'm exclusively dating. It's nobody but me and my meds. I'm super excited about it because it physically it brought me to a place. And once I got physically to a place, then mentally I was able to get somewhere. Sometimes people say, "Think it and it'll be okay." Nah, I'm an overthinker and my mind is really strong. And so as long as I see myself not doing good or throwing up or whatever I'm doing that reminds me that I have HIV, so I can't think it. Mm-hmm. My physical body had to be in a place to where I saw it, and that changed my mind. That was the beginning of changing my mind. The more that you see now, when I was no longer working, I was like, "No, Morris, you can't just sit. You got to do something." I formed a internet radio show, and I just began to do all things LGBTQ. And so if you had a web series at that time, you come into my radio show. And if you're doing this in UK, in Atlanta, you come into my radio show. If you want to call in, and this is Blog Talk Radio. Oh my gosh, I was on fire, but I wasn't living out loud with my status yet. And then comes along Thrive SS, transforming HIV resentments into victories everlasting support systems. The founder of it is a good friend of mine, and he was diagnosed the year after I was, and he knew my status. And he put me in the support group. And the conversations in that support group were what I needed to push me. One of the people in there says, "I don't see how people just get HIV and live off the land." And I was being told to live off the land. So now I got contradicting things. That was in December. I applied for a job in January and I was hired by February. And that began the rebuilding of Morris. I went back to work. I wanted to be mad at my boss. I wanted to go get stuck in traffic. I wanted to pay taxes. Yes, I'm that crazy. But I wanted to be normal. And HIV took me away from being normal. I want to be tired. I want to come home and say, "Oh, I don't feel like cooking," and go to sleep. That's normal. What normal isn't was starting with 23 pills. 23 to 17 to 10 to 4. Now I'm at 1. I'm taking less pills than people with heart problems. I'm taking less pills than people with cholesterol. I'm normal. And that was important to me. HIV took my normal away. So when I got back to being normal, then I had to get back to being Morris. Morris was the person who was in his senior class, made sure that all the seniors were registered to vote. And so when at graduation, "All registered voters, please stand." My whole class stood up. I did that. And so it was Morris. It's no longer politics. It's this. And so on December the 2nd, I went live about my status on what I used to call FaceTime Live, Drive Time Live, because I was stuck in
December
traffic.
the 2nd when?
It was 2018, 17, 16, 2016, I want to say. 2017 to 16. I went live, and that was it. It was a wrap. I went live only to tell people. I really went live for one specific group, Black gay men who love God. I wanted you to know, like, look, God still loves you, and even if you have HIV, this is what it looks like now.
Did you say it was a rap you did?
No, it was no. It was
okay. I was about to say you got to do the rap now.
but the funny thing about that day was I wanted more gay people to be reactive to that. My heterosexual friends supported me so much. I'm talking about out of the woodworks. My inbox was saying, "You are the bravest person I know," and this and this. It shocked me. It shocked me to a point where it scared me. I had never heard of people having that kind of support. And I didn't understand why people were supporting me. You live in Atlanta, Georgia, the South, like I do. And I'm gay and I'm Black and I have HIV, and you telling me y'all love me still? So wait a minute. You mean all that stuff that people are saying, they're just saying because y'all are proven wrong. Y'all telling me y'all love me. They're putting it in the comments. So it made me step back and say, self-stigma is real. And my self-stigma came from my family, my community, and my church. And all three of those love me to life now. So this Morris that you see, it took a while to get here. It took some thinking to get here, but the support of the people is what made me me. Like, I promise you, because after that, people begin to ask me, well, Morris, where can so-and-so go to go get help? Oh, well, let me find out. And I began to become a resource.
A connector.
A connector. And so then I started saying, well, let me take people through my journey. Then I brought people on the journey. It was one thing to just tell them about your status, but I said, let me bring y'all on the journey. And people were here for it. And people recognize it. Just last week, I'm on an assignment for a temp service at an apartment complex, and I'm just doing some leasing. And I go back and I say hello to the community manager, and I tell her, my status. She says, my birth father passed from complications of HIV, and she began to tell me the story. I never would have known. But because I shared, she got an opportunity to share.
I think that's so important. That's so important in that, and I'm not saying it's for everybody, because not everybody
it's not,
is, but for those who are able to, telling their story empowers other people to be able to feel supported, empowered, and protected in that I'm not the only one. And I think one of the things that is so impactful for what the World AIDS Museum does is really just that, allowing people to tell their story and being able to provide that for others to hear, because there's been volunteers and people that have come in and connected to those stories because they see themselves in that story. And when they look outside in the world, they don't see themselves. So I think what you're doing is so incredible, empowering, and impactful, not just locally, but nationally. And anybody who intersects with you is able to hear that story. I mean, you're on a job assignment and the person you're with says that. And how many people do you think she's ever told that to? A stranger, a stranger.
Yeah, not many. I don't see that being her personality, just to share that kind of story.
Absolutely.
One of the ladies in
this always happens with our spotlight interviews. We're getting very close to the end of our time here, and one of the things we always close with, Morris, is to ask people, when you're not doing all these great things to help people understand what happens with living with HIV, what do you do for fun when you're unplugged? What do you do to relax and recharge?
Believe it or not, and I know I need to see a therapist for this, and I'm not saying it funny wise, but I'm saying it serious wise. I don't feel good unless I'm helping people. And that's not a thing that people should get into, right? And this is for advocates and activists who are looking right now. We can get so caught up in doing what we're doing that it becomes our leisure and our work. And that's not who you should be. And I'm preaching to myself. And so I thank you for asking that question. I'm learning to do Sunday fun days. I had a therapist. I got my first therapist last year during COVID. And since then, she's left the agency and she's somewhere else. But she encouraged me to continue to do Sunday fun days. And so my Sunday fun day is the day that I unplug. My Sunday fun day is the day that I enjoy my faith and belief. My Sunday fun day is the day that I sleep a little longer sometimes, or go to sleep. So Sundays are the day that I reserve for fun. I have to put fun in that Sunday at some point. So Sundays are the day that I try to do that.
All right.
That's amazing. I will say that these are really too short, and we are going to have to look at them because there's that intersection with religion and church, and intersection of community, the Black community, and and even the gay community, and how the gay community treats HIV. So there's so many things that we could have a discussion on that we're definitely going to have to bring you back for it.
Listen, I am so here for this. And you know what? I think the timing of that, they probably need their own because they each have such a, all of those intersections can end the epidemic.
Yes.
That's
absolutely.
What I would say.
Absolutely.
All of those intersections can end the epidemic and quite effectively. And not even by doing a lot. It's simple moves that they can do to see 90-90-90 across the board. And that's why I want to get my master's in public health. I want to show you really how to obtain that. And it's not the medicines that do it. Science works, but people heal.
Thank you. I couldn't say it any better. There's been different conversations is that the science works and the biomedical interventions are absolutely necessary. However, it's the people that need to be able to be empowered enough to know that these are the tools that I have to be able to end the epidemic. So I am unfortunately going to end on that note and say we have spent our time with Morris Chestnut.
Listen, I'll take it.
I know you will. Morris Singletary, who is not only a community activist, but an incredible human being. And the CEO of Pozitive2Positive, which is his nonprofit. So if you haven't heard about him, check him out.
Google me.
Google it. It'll be well worth your while. Thank you very much for being yourself and telling your story and showing us what humanity really is about around this. I want to say thank everybody for listening. Next time we have Dr. Larry Mass, who is one of the co-founders of GMHC, telling his story and his intersection with HIV. So don't miss that on July 21st at 5:00. Once again, thank you, Morris.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Dr. Lopes. This has been amazing. Every time I'm in you guys' presence, whether it's here or when we first met, it's always healing. And it's healing for me. And so know that, like you just said, you are the people that are helping me. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for the people who don't get an opportunity to tell you guys thank you.
Thank you. So everybody, don't miss out next time. Have a great day. And we're signing off from the World AIDS Museum and Educational Center. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.